Sir John Major, KG, Ch. PC, is a British politician who was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and a leader of the Conservative Party from 1990 to 1997. He served as Foreign Secretary and then Chancellor of the Exchequer in the Thatcher Government from 1989 to 1990, and was the Member of Parliament for Huntingdon from 1979 to 2001. Within weeks of becoming Prime Minister, Major presided over British participation in the Gulf War in March 1991 and negotiated the Maastricht Treaty in December 1991. He went on to lead the Conservatives to a fourth consecutive election victory, winning the most votes in British electoral history with over 14 million in the 1992 general election, with a reduced majority in the House of Commons. Shortly after this, even though a staunch supporter of the Major government became responsible for British exit from the exchange rate mechanism after Black Wednesday on 16 September 1992. This event led to a loss of confidence in Conservative economic policies, and Major was never able to achieve a lead in opinion polls again, despite the eventual revival of economic growth amongst other successes such as the beginnings of the Northern Ireland peace process. By the mid-1990s, the Conservative Party was embroiled in ongoing sleaze scandals involving various MPs, including cabinet ministers. Criticism of Major's leadership reached such a pitch that he chose to resign as leader in June 1995, challenging his critics to either back him or challenge him. He was duly challenged by John Redwood but was easily re-elected. By this time, the Labour Party had moved to the centre-left under the leadership of Tony Blair and won a large number of by-elections, eventually depriving the government of its majority in February 1997. Major went on to lose the 1997 general election months later in one of the largest electoral defeats since the Great Reform Act of 1832. After defeat, Major resigned as Prime Minister and was succeeded as leader of the Conservative Party by William Hague. He went on to retire from active politics, leaving the House of Commons at the 2001 general election. Major is the oldest living former UK Prime Minister and remains an active speaker and businessman. He was an especially active figure on the side of the Remain campaign preceding the European Union membership referendum 2016 that resulted in the United Kingdom voting to leave the European Union. Early life and education. Major was born in 1943 at St Helier Hospital in Sutton, Surrey, the son of Gwen Major and E.A.Q.T. Coates, and former music hall performer Tom Major Ball, who was 64 years old when John was born. He was christened John Roy Major, but only John was recorded on his birth certificate. He used his middle name until the early 1980s. He attended primary school at Cheam Common, and from 1954 he attended Rutledge Grammar School in Merton. In 1955, with his father's garden ornaments business in decline, the family moved to Brixton. The following year, Major watched his first debate in the House of Commons, where Harold Macmillan presented his only budget as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and has attributed his political ambitions to that event. He also credited a chance meeting with former Prime Minister Clement Attlee on the King's Road shortly afterwards. Major left school at the age of 16 in 1959 with 3 O-levels in history, English language and English literature. He later gained 3 more O-levels by correspondence course in the British Constitution, mathematics and economics. Major's first job was as a clerk in the insurance brokerage firm Pratt & Amp Sons in 1959. Disliking this job, he quit. Major joined the Young Conservatives in Brixton at this time. Major was 19 years old when his father died at the age of 82 on the 27th of March 1962. His mother died 8.5 years later in September 1970 at the age of 65. After Major became Prime Minister, it was misreported that his failure to get a job as a bus conductor resulted from his failing to pass a maths test. He had in fact passed all of the necessary tests but had been passed over owing to his height. After a period of unemployment, Major started working at the London Electricity Board in 1963, which is where incidentally his successor as Prime Minister, Tony Blair, also worked when he was young. He later decided to undertake a correspondence course in banking. Major took up a post as an executive at the Standard Chartered Bank in May 1965, and he rose quickly through the ranks. He was sent to work in Jos, Nigeria by the bank in 1967, and he nearly died in a car accident there. Early political career. Major was interested in politics from an early age. Encouraged by fellow Conservative Derek Stone, he started giving speeches on a soapbox in Brixton Market. He stood as a candidate for Lambeth London Borough Council at the age of 21 in 1964, and was elected in the Conservative landslide in 1968. While on the council, he was chairman of the Housing Committee, being responsible for overseeing the building of several large council housing estates. He lost his seat in 1971. Major was an active young conservative, and according to his biographer Anthony seldom brought youthful exuberance to the Tories in Brixton, but was often in trouble with the professional agent Marion Standing. Also according to Selden, the formative political influence on Major was Jean Kierans, a divorcee 13 years his elder, who became his political mentor and his lover, too. Selden writes, she made Major smarten his appearance, groomed him politically, and made him more ambitious and worldly. Quote, the relationship lasted from 1963 to sometime after 1968. Major stood for election to Parliament in St Pancras North in both United Kingdom general elections in 1974, but was unsuccessful each time. In November 1976, Major was selected to be the candidate for the safe Conservative seat of Huntingdonshire. He won the seat in the 1979 general election. Following boundary changes, Major became the MP for the newly formed seat of Huntingdon in 1983, and retained the seat in 1987, 1992 and 1997. He retired from Parliament in 2001. He was appointed as a Parliamentary Private Secretary in 1981, becoming an Assistant Whip in 1983. He was later made Under Secretary of State for Social Security in 1985, before being promoted to become Minister of State in the same department in 1986, first attracting national media attention over cold weather payments to the elderly in January 1987, when Britain was in the depths of a severe winter. Cabinet Minister. Following the 1987 election, Major was promoted to the Cabinet as Chief Secretary to the Treasury. 2 years later, in a surprise July 1989 reshuffle, Major succeeded Geoffrey Howe as Foreign Secretary. The rapid promotion surprised many, due to Major's relative lack of experience in the Cabinet. Just 3 months later, in October 1989, Major was appointed Chancellor of the Exchequer after the sudden resignation of Nigel Lawson. This meant that, despite only being in the cabinet for little over 2 years, Major had gone from the most junior position in the cabinet to holding 2 of the great offices of state. As Chancellor, Major presented only one budget, the first to be televised live. In early 1990, he publicized it as a budget for savings and announced the tax-exempt special savings account. arguing that measures were required to address the marked fall in the household savings ratio that had been apparent during the previous financial year. In June 1990, Major suggested that the proposed single European currency should be a hard currency, competing against existing national currencies. This idea was not in the end adopted. In October 1990, Major and Douglas Hurd, Major's successor as Foreign Secretary, persuaded Thatcher to support British entry to the European exchange rate mechanism, a move which she had resisted for many years, and which had played a part in the resignation of Nigel Lawson, after Michael Heseltine challenged Thatcher from the leadership of the Conservative Party in November 1990. Major and Douglas Hurd were the proposer and seconder on her nomination papers for the leadership ballot. After Thatcher was unable to win enough support to prevent a second ballot, she announced her resignation as Prime Minister and Conservative leader. Major subsequently announced on the 22nd of November that he would stand in the second ballot. Major had been at home in Huntingdon recovering from a wisdom tooth operation during the first leadership ballot. Thatcher's nomination papers for the second ballot were sent to him by Carr for him to sign. It later emerged that he had signed both Thatcher's papers and a set of papers for his own candidacy in case she withdrew. Unlike in the first ballot, a candidate only required a simple majority of Conservative MPs to win, in this case 187 of 375 MPs. The ballot was held on the afternoon of the 27th of November, although Major fell 2 votes short of the required winning total. He polled far enough ahead of both Douglas Hurd and Michael Heseltine to secure immediate concessions from them. With no remaining challenges, Major was formally named leader of the Conservative Party that evening and was duly appointed Prime Minister the following day.